Okay, so let's talk about leads and tracking them. Okay, so this dashboard, what you see in front of you is where you're going to be spending most of your time, at least you or your staff members, where you want to declare ROI. So as you can see, the stats above are pretty common sense. You've got the amount of leads you've got, where they came from, quotable, not quotable, etc., which just means were they qualified or not qualified. And then you've got your quote value and sales value. So quote value being if you send a proposal out with 10 grand, that's going to be different to what actually gets in the bank, right? And as you can see, a lot of clients aren't using that feature. So this video is to help educate on that. Okay, so with that being said, this is a mesh of different clients, and I'm just going to go through quickly. You'll see a mix of transactions, and you'll see phone calls, web forms, all this kind of stuff. You'll see that some have been marked as yes, they're quotable because sales have come through these transactions for an e-commerce store, so that's totally normal. But then you'll get service businesses where they've got web forms and phone calls, and they're yet to determine whether or not that lead is qualified and how much money came from that lead to actually track the ROI. So there's really cool functionality in here, by the way, before I continue. With phone calls, you can track the transcript, the actual phone call itself, so that you can monitor your sales team to see what was going on, how did we go with that sale. You can monitor it for performance improvements for your sales, to monitor the conversions, all that kind of stuff. It's really, really cool. Inside of here, you'll see all these columns. It's kind of like a spreadsheet in a way, and you'll see the rest of the info in here, you know, the date range, the sales value, what money in the bank sort of thing, were they a duplicate or spam. That's very important if you feel like they're duplicate or spam. And one case point is that sometimes people will refresh a receipt page or a thank you page, and they might sometimes, depending on the platform, be marked again. And all you need to know is that that's totally normal, and you just mark that as a duplicate. Okay, so going through here, you've got things like source, medium, campaign. You know, this one came from Google Ads. This one came direct. If we go to other ones, we might find that this one came for organic, which is SEO, or Yahoo SEO, organic. Some really, really cool stuff. And on the right side, you'll see the landing page where this person came, like which page did they first visit on your website, and which page did they become a lead or transaction, which was a lead page, different from the landing page. And you'll see, so that's an e-commerce store, so it's likely that that's always going to be the same, the lead page, because it's like the checkout page. Whereas if you've got a service business, let me go through here. We've got a different landing page. This one came to Invisalign page, and then they became a lead on the About page. It's really, really cool information. And you can click on the lead form, the lead button here, and see this kind of info, like what was the call recording? How long did it go for? This particular client doesn't have the call transcripts enabled as a feature, so you can't see what the actual contents of the call in writing, but you can easily switch that on. Really cool stuff. You can see, you know, where people came from, their IP addresses, what device they used, all that kind of stuff. Really, really cool. But I guess for all intents and purposes, the main use of this platform for your staff is to mark whether or not the lead was quotable, how much quote value or sales value, very, very important. Sales value is arguably more important. And the reason why you want to do this, right, it's twofold. One, you want to see what ROI you have across all your channels, from like social media, Reddit posts, ads, Yahoo, as you saw, referrals, all this kind of stuff. It tracks automatically as soon as it's set up, of course. The second reason you want to do it is to train algorithms. So if you're running ads to Facebook or Google Ads, you can feed this data back to those platforms automatically and train those platforms to find better quality leads, which is partly a huge reason why we use this. So for example, service businesses, they sometimes have a lot of trouble teaching Google Ads algorithm to find better quality leads through sales value, right? Now this fixes that problem, because if you're a service business, you can mark whether or not you made $500 from this lead and it is quotable. You can feed that data back to Google Ads, and Google Ads will say, hey, okay, well, we made $500 from this lead and they seem to be quotable. We're going to try to find more people like that in their demographics, their psychographics, all that kind of stuff. We're going to try to find more people like that, and there's probably a higher likelihood that they're going to have a similar outcome. Okay, so that's what you want to do. So from a daily basis, you want to just play around and train your teams to play around with this quote value, sales value, all that kind of stuff. Now, one big thing I get a lot of people ask me this all the time is, when do you actually set something as quotable or not quotable? Like, I had someone on the phone, everything went great, they were a good fit, but we didn't close them, so I'm going to mark them as not quotable. Please do not do that, because what happens is that lead was actually qualified. They were quotable, they were a good fit, all that kind of stuff. Just because you didn't convert them in a sale doesn't mean they were not quotable, if that makes sense. And that's a huge mistake people make, because as soon as you start marking those ones as not quotable, the algorithm's going to get confused and be like, oh, okay, well, I thought this was a good fit, but obviously they're not. We're going to find other kinds of people, so you don't want to make that mistake, because you're going to ruin your ads, right? So make sure that if they were a good fit, they weren't a tire kicker, they were actually everything that you'd like, you just didn't have the ability to persuade them at that moment, you still need to mark them as quotable, yes. Okay. On the contrary, if they're a tire kicker, if they're wasting your time, they're not a good fit, then yes, you do mark them as not quotable. Okay, so that's the intricacy there. Sometimes we have clients with 6-month lead times where the sales cycle is quite long, and they might not get an answer until like 3 months or 6 months down the track. You still need to make sure, if you feel they're a good fit, all that kind of stuff, still mark them as quotable, right? Still say yes. So that's one big thing, because a lot of people get confused on that, and they hesitate to say, mark this as yes, because they're like, oh, we don't know if that's going to turn into a sale. Okay, so very, very important. Make sure you're marking them as yes, quotable. Yeah, that's pretty much everything. So we've gone through, I think we've gone through choosing your columns to go through your information if you want to see more info. We've gone through the actual leads, marking them as quotable, yes or no, when to mark them, the actual sales value, all that kind of stuff. We've gone through the lead view. There's some really, really cool information that you can play around with this tool. And it's really, really, really powerful. So I think if you can organize your team to update this information as frequently as possible, the better your ads are, the more clarity you have on your ROI marketing, which we'll get into the next video. And yeah, so if you do have any questions, leave me some comments down below. I'm happy to help. Thanks.